we're concerned about the parking, so we wanted to make sure that everybody that had bought a ticket was here. Can you hear me?
Yeah.
Can we hear? Everybody's still talking over on that
What
side.
about the parking? Say it again.
I just said that we were waiting for people because parking was so bad today. Yes, it was a little bad today. My name's Daphne. I'm just going to move closer to this mic. I'm Vice President of Philadelphia Women in Film and Television, and we really thank you for coming out. We're so excited about today's program. And first off, I want to thank Fong and Maureen and Diane, and you'll please talk to the other women in PWIFT that are on the board that are here today. Diane's in the back, and Maureen's over here doing something technical with Fong. We have quite a great program of education that we've had. This is one of our bi-yearly workshops, and I want to just start by finding out first, before we introduce our panel, how many of you that have come here today, and I have the list here, but I want to ask you, have a documentary in progress? Hands high. Okay, good, that's about half of you. And then how many of you have a scripted work in progress? All right, split pretty evenly. That's kind of nice. So, and how many of you are in, can I find out how many of you are in production? That's quite a lot of you. And how many in post-production? And how many are in pre? It's divided up pretty well too. Did anybody come with a sort of distribution plan? And you didn't have to, it was just if you had like sort of a festival strategy, or if you already had a spreadsheet. Anybody show up with their spreadsheet? They're going to have one. That's fine, that was our goal today, to help get other half ones over there. It's the hardest thing to do. And if you can't hire a consultant, we're hoping you're going to be able to walk away today looking at how you can do that. The first thing I want to do, again, before we introduce our panelists, is I want everyone to take a look at somebody on their right, and I'm giving you 3 minutes to find something in common with that person. I want you to find 3 things in common with the person to your right. You got 3 minutes to find. It doesn't need being here today. Not here today. Not that simple. You gotta go find someone to your right. What are 3 things in common you have with them?
Also, I like how all the documentary makers found themselves right there.
Yeah.
Right there.
Hello?
You gotta show it.
Lost control. We have our habit. All right. I'm going to get you guys to be able to catch up again at lunch. I'm going to ask you guys to stop for a second, please. Because we'd like to start the panel, because we're here to learn from our guests. And the whole goal of that was that, so you guys, the whole point of doing these workshops is so that you meet each other, you share about filmmaking, you're able to then connect with each other later, and as we're talking and asking questions, and as Rich and Scott and Teresa teach us stuff, and we go out for questions, you can confer amongst each other to say, what question is missing? What do I still want to be answered? So we're just very lucky to have here, and I'm just going to, because I don't know their bios by heart, though I know Rich for years and have followed his career in Breaking Glass Pictures, and we're very excited to have Rich and Scott here. And Scott, give me your last name again, because I'm bad at names. Matisco. So Rich was a partner in TLA years ago, and I remember following TLA then, which was amazing. He's CEO and co-president of Breaking Glass Pictures, a graduate of Temple, so he stayed in Philly. We were glad and lucky to have him here at 75 in advertising and journalism. And he's had 20 years of experience in the entertainment industry, and he's licensed more than 500 films, which is just out of this world amazing, both domestically and worldwide. He's just came back from Sundance, so I think that hopefully you can tell us a little bit about what's going on. And he yearly visits Cannes and Sundance, the American Film Market, Berlin Festival, South by Southwest, all the ones I want to go to, Toronto, Tribeca, and yes, I'd like to go to Rio International. So thanks for joining us. And we also have, and then I'm going to just introduce everyone and then have you talk a little bit. And Scott has been working for 9 years with Rich and is a Drexel grad. And he has the job that I just said that I would like. He's now in Europe, kind of doing PR and marketing for Breaking Glass Films. which is very exciting that you guys are doing that international distribution and working that. And he is head of marketing and PR for Working Glass. So that's such an important role for filmmakers to understand. What do we need to do after we make our film? And hopefully Scott can shed some light on great strategies for us. And then we're really amazed that Teresa did this because we asked her like last week, and I think she was at, were you at Real Screen when Fong found her? And we were like, Fong, see if she'll come. And we were so lucky to have her. And Teresa has won the Independent Spirit Award. She was vice president, she is vice president of external affairs of American Documentary and the producer of PWIFT on PBS. She, for the past decade, has managed and developed communications and public programming initiatives for HBO, MTV, Macy's, Toyota, and then she's also, I think you've also done some of your own films, Nine Man, which was at Doc New York City in 2014, Advantageous, which was at Sundance in 2015. That's a lot in a short amount of time. How do you get two out there in 2 years? That's amazing. You can read more about her on I guess the emailer that we sent around. She hails from San Francisco, so that's what we found that we had in common, because I lived there for a long time, and it was really interesting speaking to her, because I noticed in the room that we have probably a lot of women that are more senior executives and senior filmmakers and have worked for a while, so we were talking about that's a topic that doesn't get straddled a lot and talked about, and hopefully we can shed some light on that today. We were talking about in that kind of experience being useful as a filmmaker. We know that she left her baby in the car, who was 14 months old, but her husband was with the baby, so we heard that.
Definitely not just in there by herself. They're wandering.
So if I could go, I'm going to start. Rich, if I can start with you, and then we'll move closer. Can you tell us a little bit, and I'm sorry, I'm going to get to my questions because I'm reading on the iPhone and it's back right here, so give me a moment to get up to my questions. I'd like to just start an overall for you guys to tell us about yourself and how you got to where you are, what was the road, and why you're doing what you're doing.
Okay, I'll keep this brief.
The Facebook one, like the Facebook story version.
Yeah, okay. So I went to Temple and wasn't particularly a great student. I went to the movies all the time, literally. And, I remember seeing Barry Lyndon 4 times, just going to the movies all the time, took some film classes, but kind of fell into this by accident. I was a punk rock promoter, and there was a theater on South Street, Theater of the Living Arts, and I had this band that just came back from touring in Europe, or England actually, and so I booked them into the Theater of the Living Arts, got friendly with the manager. The person who actually had the lease on the theater became disinterested, left. The manager who I was friendly with said, hey, let's open the theater. We raised a little bit of money. And this was like 1981, and had a very successful run. We bought the theater to find, excuse me, we wound up purchasing the theater a year later for the princely sum of, it was like $600,000, which isn't a lot of money right now. And then we opened up 2 other theaters. Then we opened a chain of video stores in Manhattan and Philadelphia, and a mail order company. We said, well, maybe we should start going and licensing our own films to sell, because we got so big in mail order, we were sending out about 20 million catalogs a year, and we didn't realize, how fast things were growing. So there was just a progression of licensing our own product. Did that, and then there was kind of a change in the industry, 2008, 2009. I left the company, started Breaking Glass Pictures, officially opened in 2009, was planning it, and then we've licensed about 400 films since we opened the company. Last year we released 45 films, so we're doing almost one a week, all genres. We do docs, features, family. We basically look at what we can sell, what's Redbox looking for, what's Netflix buying or not buying, what's going on with Amazon and their festival programs, what can we exploit from there. So basically we do a lot of different genres. We do foreign films, we everything, but we kind of look at who's the market for the film. Like dramas right now. We had a meeting at Redbox last month. And, you do these meetings. Hey, what are you looking for? What are you buying? Well, we're looking for supernatural dramas. Forget it. So we're very risk adverse for like a no-name drama. It's very difficult. No-name comedies, forget it, So right now, it used to be a lot more creative. We could buy what we liked and what was we thought, oh, this will be a cool release. We'll figure out how to monetize it. But those days are long gone.
Well, we'll get more into what the genres were and open it up to figure out what people are looking for, and so but I'm going to keep going down now. And Scott, can you tell us a little bit about how you ended up being with Rich for 9 years?
And what a great 9 years it's been. So I started off at Drexel University as an undergrad in 2008. I was a psychology major with a focus on more clinical work. So I did if you know, Drexel does a trimester system where they have co-op and all that. So I did my first internship at a lab and hated it. So I switched gears and did psychology and marketing. So my second co-op was actually at Breaking Glass Pictures. They took me on. I worked there for 6 months, and then they brought me back for my third co-op that we have to do through the school. And after that, they hired me on to be full-time. So I worked with them from my sophomore year throughout my undergrad. I worked with them afterwards after I graduated. I eventually went to law school, and I still did freelance for them for a little while. But then I decided, I don't like being a lawyer either. So Rich offered me a job as the director of marketing and PR at Breaking Glass, so that's where I am now. So, sorry. Yep. Is that better? There you go. Yeah, so I went to law school, realized I didn't like being an attorney as much as I thought I would. So Rich hired me on to be the director of marketing and PR for Breaking Glass. And I think throughout the company's career history, I've worked on one way or another every single title they've released so far. So that's pretty much how I got here. Yeah. That's the short and sweet version.
And what excites you, I'm going to ask you because this was a second part, we know for Rich because of his long history, but what excites you about this, that you left psychology, to do distribution?
Well, I mean, I think it's the same as more or less everyone in the room. We all went to the movies when we were younger. We all loved seeing, big films on the big screen. I just fell in love with them. My parents were huge movie buffs, so that was a big, push towards that. We always went to the films when I was a kid. I continued doing it as a teenager. I think I spent more money at the theater than I did anywhere else. So it just kind of, I guess like how Rich said, we kind of just fell into that career, and here we are.
Thank you. Tracy, I'm going to just tuck into this thing and then give it back to you. But again, if you could tell us about how did you get where you are, and what really excites you about the endeavors that you're into right now?
So, my family immigrated from the Philippines in the 80s during the Marcos dictatorship. And I don't know if folks are familiar here with the history of the Philippines. It was colonized by Spain for several centuries, and then the U.S. came. So we like to say that we spent 500 years in the convent and 50 in Hollywood. And so much of my upbringing was really, my grandparents and my parents loved American cinema. And my mother grew, kind of raised us on soap opera and drama and melodrama. And so this was kind of the way that I learned about and experienced American culture. And it's always been something that's been so fascinating to me. So when I went I grew up in the Bay Area, in the San Francisco Bay Area outside of Oakland. And when I went away to undergraduate, I'd always had a love for history, but so much of what I was reading just felt like there was stuff missing. Like I didn't see my own family's, story there. My grandfather had fought in World War II. On the island, and none of that was being represented in what I was reading, and so I double majored in ethnic studies to just kind of ensure that stuff that I felt like was missing. I had a responsibility to ensure that those perspectives and that those stories and narratives were being told and were being lost, especially as that entire generation of kind of veteranos from World War II are now disappearing, and this is happening in so many other communities and so many other folks' experiences, just people being erased from the page, from the screen, right? And just so fascinating, I think, going back to the Bay Area after that, and really what was important to me was this idea of story and narrative truth. And I went on to work for a film festival in San Francisco, the Asian American Film Festival, and it was the largest one in the country. We have a very strong relationship with Comcast, who's been a longtime sponsor. And what was great about that was being able to work with first-time filmmakers and seeing folks at the very nascent of their career. Now people know these names and their household names, but at the time it just felt like no one would ever pay money to watch Asians or Asian Americans on screen. Like we had Better Luck Tomorrow at Sundance one year, and Roger Ebert standing up and saying, you can tell whatever story you want about your community. You don't have to be a model minority all the time. Then we had Joy Luck Club, and then we had to wait how much longer for Crazy Rich Asians to be this worldwide phenomenon. So that's kind of my background, and primarily my background is really in raising money for these stories, so grant writing, corporate sponsorship, and producing events around that. And what had happened at one of these events is I met a young filmmaker by the name of H.P. Mendoza, and film festivals are really, I can't express enough how critical they are to kind of building community, building your connections. Karaoke, and so literally over a karaoke session, it was my informal audition for the film that later became Fruit Fly, which TLA ended up acquiring and distributing, and that did its circuit in 2008. And because I was fundraising for the arts, I really was on the front line of seeing. I saw, the recession was coming. The arts is the place that kind of gets hit first, and so I hid out in grad school in Hawaii for a few years and worked with a film festival there and worked with filmmakers there. And when I came back to California, I started to produce my own work, and so the first feature that I had made was with an HP script with Rich Wong, who was the director of Colma the Musical. $30,000, shot it, got it out to festivals here. It played at Fong's Festival, the Asian American Film Festival over at what is now Lightbox, sold that out. And it was, understanding what the different circuits looked like, going through the kind of agony of not making it to a top tier, festival on my first go around, and being really realistic about what's possible and understanding your market and understanding your audience. Came out to New York and worked on a film called Advantageous, which went to Sundance, was nominated for John Cassavetes, won a award there, and that. My entire career really has been about working with underrepresented makers, storytellers, bringing kind of these types of stories to the forefront. And since then, I've transitioned to working with POV, which is the longest running documentary series on television. We're broadcast on PBS, which reaches about 98% of the country. And what's interesting about that is, at the beginning when this first started, so its 32nd season is coming up, it was just us and HBO who really were the ones, we were the games in town in terms of who was acquiring docs in this way. And obviously things have changed and a lot of money has been infused into the market, but not for everybody. And I think that's what we'll talk about, right? Is how to kind of find yourself in the stream of that. I'm happy to demystify what PBS is. And how to work with folks with HYY, who's just gotten a brand new programmer for the indie strands, who really wants to work with indie filmmakers here in ways, exactly. This is literally, we were just here last month talking about this. You guys need to do a better job with your community because you have amazing filmmakers out here in Philly.
20 years of them, really, I have to say. We said we were going to be candid here, and so we had probably, coming from San Francisco, who was so supportive, and working with people in Boston, who were so supportive. It would be nice to know that WHYY here, because there's probably one great, fantastic director who's worked with them for years, who's a friend of mine who I adore, but they really don't reach out, they don't put money into it. Because they said, well, we've got the greatest radio.
Yeah.
So that would be interesting to hear what the plan is for that from you.
I'll
what
tell you
know.
her name, and you should go out and find her, and you should knock on her door, because she just came here from San Francisco.
Which is knocking on her door.
Which is why she's very interested in kind of making sure that this community feels supported.
Her name is?
Her name is Sridevi. I'll get her last name, but it's Sridevi, Srideevi. So she's the new programmer here at HYY. I mean, we can't all get, like an interview on Fresh Air, but we can only hope. So.
Only hope.
Yeah.
I'm going to just start out with another open question, and then we'll get more specific based on what you guys have said, because you come from such a great, diverse background that helps everyone here. So the opening question that is kind of interesting, because it's where I get lost, and I consider myself tech savvy, but with so many venues and tech platforms being launched today, what is the landscape like now for the next couple of years? And you had started talking about that, Rich, when you were talking about what your past couple meetings. What's the landscape like now for the next couple of years for distribution? And where should indie filmmakers be paying attention when they are not all consumed with making their films?
Okay, so the landscape for the next couple of years, the business model changes for us basically maybe twice a year. It changes so much, so fast, so let's keep it to maybe a year or two, if that's okay. So right now, you have your physical product, which is still in certain genres sells, physical meaning DVD. And there's still life in the market. You have your broadcast, which is pretty steady. I'd say out of all the arenas, we're doing, I think Showtime in the last year-ish bought 5 films from us. Stars did 2 or 3. HBO. It's funny, I have the best relationship with the buyer from HBO, but they don't buy anything from us. Theatrical, we do too many theatricals because all the filmmakers want their films, they want to have a theatrical run. We tend to do a lot of them in LA versus New York because we'll four-wall a theater. And the reason why you four-wall is because windows are probably one of the more important aspects of releasing right now, making sure that you can do what you need to do and stay within every company's window. And the concept of a window, when we do a movie on In Demand, well, they want a 30 to 60 day blackout at the end of your run. So you have to kind of coordinate all your other platforms from TVOD to SVOD to AVOD.
And do folks do folks want that to, can you break that down for them? The VODs.
Yeah, okay. So thank you. Yeah. So TVOD is transactional VOD. SVOD is subscription. So subscription be Netflix, Amazon Prime, Hulu, things like that. TVOD is iTunes, In Demand, Ubiquity, Dish, these, so it's just transactional. So that's the distinction there. AVOD, which is advertising-based VOD. Okay, so tell me if I'm going off point, because I tend to drift a little bit.
I think
This is what we need to learn, right?
I think even what you can help with also, we were talking about this a little bit, Scott, is even a breakdown of what rights look like. I mean, that's something that I feel like when I was coming up as a filmmaker, I remember a mentor of mine said, make sure you ask for points, right? And I was like, okay. So I went to the producer and I was like, can I get 10 points on the film? They're like, okay, what's 10% of zero, right? Because there's not going to be any profit on this film. So maybe you can walk through even like your description of theatrical versus broadcast and the bonds.
Yeah, no, that's fine. So anyway, here's the 3 years ago in distribution, Netflix was money. We do a sale. We'd get $300,000, $400,000 for like movies. It was great for cash flow. And then, as we all know, Netflix has been doing a lot of their own productions. I mean, they've turned into a studio. So they were buying less. And they're buying now, but they're much more selective. And they used to buy 80% of what we pitched them, in the past. Then, about 2 years ago, Amazon came up with this amazing program. And what this was just a great deal for filmmakers, distributors. If a film played South by Southwest, Sundance, Tribeca, or Toronto, that they would give you $25,000 to $100,000, non-recoupable, if you would commit to having that film on Amazon Prime for 2 years exclusively. And they would double the amount of money that they would pay you per hour. Amazon at that point was paying 15 cents an hour. So if you have a 90-minute film, you were getting 22 cents for a run. They since last March 1st changed it to 6 cents an hour. So now you're getting 9 cents versus 22 cents. But anyway, they had this great program because you could pay the filmmaker more money. There's a film currently that we have with Teresa's company sitting, and Amazon paid us $75,000 for the rights. So it was like, wow, this is great, filmmakers. But that program ended. So I'm giving you a little bit of background. What's hot right now? AVOD. And AVOD is a platform that used to be kind of the bastard of the industry. Distributors really, hey, you can put your movie up for free and, people, can suffer through some ads. But there's a new, it's not a new platform, but Tubi, Tubi.tv, T-U-B-I, that has become like one of these amazing moneymakers for distribution. It's curated, it's free, and we're seeing like just stupid numbers coming out of Tubi. And 2 years ago it was around, but nobody really paid much attention to it. What else did you ask me to
I think it's
mention?
so when people are looking for deals,
Yeah.
what does that mean? Like I know somebody said, well, what's your term? I'm sorry. I just was lucky enough to get distribution for a film that took me 10 years to make, and it's going to be actually come to the Kimmel April 3rd because it's a PWIFT event, and then it'll be a pre-release, which I still don't understand. And believe me, I'm going to bother Rich about this because I have to do a lot of my own. Filmmakers are responsible for doing a lot of their own marketing and PR around the pre-release. But when you come to starting backwards, so it's all new to me as well as you guys, because my first film got picked up and I didn't know what I was doing, and the attorneys did it, and I've not seen a penny from it, and Off the Fence still has it, and they asked me to renew, and I'm like, okay, great. I'll never see a penny, but hey. So that's what's disconcerting for filmmakers is, what are the terms that we're looking for, and are we looking for theatrical still? I know my first film was theatrical, this is not. So how do we figure out what we're doing?
I think even just this idea of, if we can demystify the difference of like this, what the role of a sales agent is versus a distributor, because I think even that, and maybe Rich can speak a little bit more, like when you're, in one of the questions that she would ask us in, our pre-interview emails was just, how do you build your festival strategy? What do you think about in terms of distribution strategy? And I would kind of break it down in terms of 4 aspects, whether you're a narrative or a doc, whatever your story is. It's like, is it about qualifying? There are certain festivals that are qualifying festivals that will get you kind of deals like this in terms of what was formerly Amazon Stars if you're trying to be an Oscar qualifier. There are very particular tiers of festivals that you can look at that are like your dream festivals. There's also festivals that are like markets or forums, right? So that's a place where you get picked up. That's a place where you could meet a distributor, or you would bring a sales agent with you and try to kind of make sure you have somebody advocating for your film in the best possible way. Ideally, your sales agent is the one who's going to break down all of the aspects of your contract for you, whether it's the home, physical distribution, theatrical, your broadcast rights, which I can speak to in terms of public media, your streaming, your VOD streaming rights, your ancillaries, so like the hotels, cruise ships, your educational distribution if you're a doc, which is really something that you have the opportunity to own, and there are a lot of folks out there that do specifically just educational distribution. And then there's these other ideas, like you have to just think about like, what do you want your film to do? Oftentimes at doc makers, it's about impact. It's about making sure that your film is getting out to the communities or the audiences you want to see. If you don't have, the budget for a sales agent or a publicist, which ideally you would, or an impact producer in many cases, then oftentimes your festival circuit is your impact campaign, where you are hoping to have the colleges and universities and librarians or whoever use the festival circuit almost as your 4-wall, where you're inviting particular press or whoever to your screenings and hoping that they'll in turn acquire your film for their libraries or for their universities, or pay you an honorary to come and speak, right? So you kind of want to think about it on both ends, but it just depends what hat you're wearing. So many of us here wear all the hats, but it's like, are you the producer director on this film? Are you primarily director on this film and you want to focus on the creative component, or are you really line producing and trying to make sure that you don't end up too much in the hole? And if you can't do all of those things, or you don't even know what those roles are, then this is the space where you meet other people, and maybe you're the producer on one person's film, so you can really direct produce your story and make sure that the story is strong, because that's all that really matters. Nobody's going to buy a bad film, right?
I just want to take it back when you said, because again, to sales agent, that's one of the hardest things to do, whether you're an agent for reality or for scripted. I think for a lot of people here, when you're sitting in Philadelphia versus New York or LA or Atlanta now, where there's such a hub of finding an agent, Rich is one of the few successful, might be the only successful big distributor here in Philadelphia area. How does one go about finding that agent? Who do you bug? What do you do? I mean, I think that's I think it's difficult for anybody here that's not reached out in New York or LA to figure out how do you find that sales agent, and do you have to have one?
Do you need one?
Yes.
That's the question, yeah.
And also, I think it might be easiest, and that's all great points. Rich can definitely speak to this better, but I think it's also important, Rich, when we go down, maybe we go through the entire timeline of once the film's completed, how do, straight down the clock. So once you complete the film, go to. Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, so I think that's what we asked for our first question is, when do you start your strategy? And then how do you start your strategy? That was the next question, so you guys are already into that.
So with the sales agent, something I failed to mention, Breaking Glass has a international sales division. So we're picking up rights worldwide on probably 30% of our films right now. And we just had a sales booth in Berlin, which ended Thursday. Our guys flew back from there Friday. So I don't know how we did, but I think we did probably okay. Regarding sales agents, if you get a guide or a directory list for Toronto or any of the major festivals, any of the major film markets, the AFM, Berlin, Cannes, there's 1 million sales agents. So it's not difficult to find them. There's more sales agents than there are distribution companies. Like in the indie distribution market, I'd say there's 25 legitimate companies. Would you?
Yeah, it's like Cinetic, Riot, Neon, Breaking Glass.
No, but I mean,
Yeah.
right, but
Oh, yeah.
after
Oh, yeah,
the
yeah.
majors,
Yeah.
there's 25 companies. So finding a sales agent is not that difficult. Getting the right deal is not the easiest, and the reality is, in a market economy that we're in, there's more supply than demand. So, for instance, for a company, of our size, we have, I don't know, 12, 13 employees, Pennsylvania, and a couple out in California. We have products pitched to us continuously. So we're looking at the markets, but we also have stuff, because we've been around for a minute, that just saying, hey, I'm a friend of so-and-so, or we worked together, 10 years ago, here's a new product, project. And so there's so much that we can choose from. This weekend, we probably had 6 or 7 films to go through. And it's tedious. It's kind of like people say, oh, it must be great being in acquisitions. And this, it sounds great, but it's almost akin. Think about like a guy who shoots adult movies. You think, well, that's got to be it's a job. Second day, the 4th year, it's a job. Being a chef in a restaurant or working in a great bakery, you're sick of, pastries after a couple of weeks. So it's really something, the discipline is really the hardest part of the job, because you watch a lot of crap, and there's just a lot of junk, and you don't know how good it is. Well, film played this film festival. It's got to be okay. There's a lot of junk.
It's like a filter, like a festival can serve as a filter in many ways. And so if you are thinking about your distribution strategy, you almost want to think about, are you looking at an industry-facing festival, which really would have a market or a forum, or are you really just looking at a consumer-facing festival, something like Black Star, something like, I don't know, what would be another... Tribeca now has more of a market, right? But I think historically they really have been more of a consumer-facing festival as opposed to...
The Philadelphia Film Festival is just a pedestrian. It's basically the best of Toronto, Sundance. It's just a culmination. But it's not that hard to find a distributor. It's what kind of deal you're going to get. And people have, Scott and I went up to Temple. We go up once a year to speak at a class. So the instructor, her theme was do it yourself. I think you were there too, Tatsuki. Yeah, and it was like, wait, you're asking us to come in about distribution, and you're telling kids you could do it yourself. Yeah, you can do it yourself. But I've had filmmakers who have gone to, and they said, you know what, we're going to go with distributor. I'm like, great, just go ahead. And a lot of times you get a call 2-3 months after they release. Nothing's working, we're not making, well, did you hire a publicist? No. Did you do this? Who picked up your press release? Scott can work miracles with getting releases and stuff picked up because he's feeding them stuff every week, whereas if somebody from left field sends something up, Screen or Hollywood Reporter or Variety, they're not really paying that much attention. And they also know this person's sending one release in, a year or 2 years. So, people want to work with who they, like to work with. So it's really a bad idea to do unless you really, really have it down. And
you have to have the connections. I think that's really the biggest thing is you'd only be able to self-distribute if you have a very low profit that you're trying to make, or if you already come with a lot of those connections to the industry. Because if not, what's going to happen is what happened to me with my first film, is you're going to try to self-distribute. You're not going to get picked up anywhere, obviously, and you're going to just end up going through an aggregator who's going to sell your film as part of a bundle of a whole bunch of content to someone like Amazon, and it's going to get buried, and you're not going to see a cent. You know what I mean? So.
Mm-hmm. And I think they both touched on it, but I want to reiterate, your 3 greatest tools are going to be online. So IMDb Pro, get an account. That's going to be the most important if you're looking for sales agents, if you're looking for distributors. There's always contact information available. There's another. Yep, IMDb Pro. And also another really popular website, which I highly recommend, is Sinando. That's where festival signups are. That's where a lot of people who attend these festivals, there are just lists available. Sinando, Cinando. So that's where a lot of the festival sign-up lists are located. If you have an account, it's available to you. So you can always look that up, reach out to anybody who goes to those festivals if you're looking for distribution, if you're looking for a sales agent, whatever you need. And also networking. Don't be afraid to just send an email, call people, especially call people because they remember you after that. Because it's, people rarely call people anymore. Yeah. So those are your 3 big takeaways
I'm
from.
going to ask you about calling people again. I'm so sorry. And I think that, as outgoing as I am, I'm intimidated to call new people, and I'm very shy around new people. I'm very comfortable around the people I know. How to stretch that? You feel like I'm bothering someone, or they don't know me. Do they care? What's it like to call distributors? Because I look at them, and I don't know how other people feel. Maybe there's other people that are more outgoing, but I have a hesitation when I pick up the phone, and I'm a stutterer. So the idea of having to call somebody I don't know, will they ever call back? Do you call more than once? What is comfortable when you guys get calls and emails?
So we get called at least once a day. There will be a filmmaker or someone who will reach out about a title or about a project that they're pitching at least once a day. I get maybe 20 emails from filmmakers for projects. So what I recommend when people do call is have your game plan in hand, know what you want to talk about, be brief and succinct so you're not rambling. Just practice it yourself in the mirror if you have to before you make the phone call. That way at least you know what points you want to hit, and then if he says no thanks or never mind, at least you were quick and you weren't taking up too much time. The strategy I typically recommend is when you do reach out to these people, send them an email first and then give them a call a few days later to follow up. That way you can reference the email when you call them. So you can say, hey, Mr. So-and-so, I sent you an email on this date. I just want to follow up. This is my project. Would you be interested? Can I send you a script? Something like that. That's usually the best strategy, I think, that I recommend for people.
I'd also say do your research. If you do your research and you see what these distributors, what they want, what they're picking up, and you see their title similar to what you want, I would say it would make your job so much easier if you're hitting up somebody and you know that you have what they're looking for, as opposed to kind of feeling around blindly. A lot of the films that I make, the films that I've made in the past have been with career filmmakers. So obviously we're going to hit up distributors who have that niche audience and they know how to sell your film and they know what to do with your film. And so I think that's really critical, is to do the homework. And Rich just gave you a bunch of different resources where you could literally have a directory of everybody who's out there who's buying. This is our job, is to acquire. Make it easy. Make it as easy as possible for us to do our job by telling us why your project makes sense for what we're looking for.
We're much happier that way.
Yeah, and it saves you time. Right?
Yeah, and Teresa definitely hit the point where definitely do your research on the company beforehand. So don't pitch a company who just does LGBT product if you're doing a horror doc or something like that, because that's they'll get annoyed and then they will never talk to you if you do an LGBT piece. So just good to keep that in mind.
And how do you do that research? And I'm going to break this down because with real screen and television, that you can get your, for me, I know that I can steal from friends who have agents because they used to have a manager to find out what they eat because they come out every 6 months with what their network's looking for. And they change that. Like you said, the cross-platform changes a couple times a year. So does looking for what a television network wants. What about what distributors and sales agents are looking for, or how do you find, or film festivals because they change? How do you do that research besides just online, seeing what's already there to know what they're going to look for?
Good. So Scott brought up something which I failed to do. IMDb Pro. I think it's about $12 a month, and we use it. It's the best tool out there. I mean, it's amazing. It gives you phone numbers. For instance, before we showed up here, I went into Pro, and I knew all of Teresa's projects. Then I saw that we worked with some of the same people. You can kind of connect the dots. So the easiest way, to figure out who's buying what, is you get this Pro account, and you put in Breaking Glass pictures. You see what we buy. Then you go Strange Releasing. Then you put in Neon. Then you put in, just a host of 10 different companies. Uncorked, ITN, Darkstar. There's all these companies. And you just see what they're buying. And it's not difficult. You could go, okay, this company does horror. This one's doing more action. This one's doing, mostly documentaries. Gravitas, who was brought up, Gravitas releases about I don't know, 400 movies a year, something in that. So you go and you look at that, you go, okay, here's a company that does a little bit of everything, which they do. So there's an easy place. You go, okay, they've done all these films. I'll contact them. And it's real easy to find contact information on IMDb. And if it's not there, you go into LinkedIn, you put in a couple company names. It's pretty simple.
Yeah, but I think it goes back to strategy, right? It's like you have to, like when you have your film, and you have to really make sure you understand what your role is on that particular project. Are you the creative, or are you, the line producer, EP? Or do you need to find somebody to wear that hat so you can focus on making sure that you're not stuck in post for a doc for 6 to 7 years because you're trying to do everything because you're trying to save money because you don't have a budget, right? Work either a publicist into your budget or work, something like that into your budget so you can make sure that you kind of move your project forward. And for the big thing that I would say is it really does rely, like there's so much of it that depends on connections. And if you don't have proximity to the industry or you don't have those existing connections, so much, like this network is amazing. There are networks like Film Fatale for the women in the room, Brown Girls Doc Mafia, spaces where it's literally about kind of replacing, what would have been spaces that are previously closed off to women and women of color and women of a particular age, and ensuring that there's representation for you, that you have the kind of folks who can help, listen to your pitch first. Practice pitch sessions, right? I'm going to Australia for AIDC next month or in a few weeks to kind of go through, and I'm going to be sitting through crazy pitch sessions, and you can probably talk about what that's like. We are just listening to people pitch their projects, it's like speed dating, but with no payoff at the end. So. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about that. And even understanding like a market, when we say like the Berlin Alley, like the Berlin market, it's literally booths. Like there are booths of distributors, like if you can envision it in your head. So these are the kinds of things that even being able to visualize, what the literal market looks like and what these literal transactions interaction look like can help you prepare your strategy or a game plan.
And it's also important to mention, and again, Teresa mentioned it before, festivals are one of your best resources as well, because we are there, especially when there are markets, we are there to be there to listen to people. Yes, we have sales meetings scheduled, but there's a lot of the time where we have someone manning our booth just waiting for people to come up to talk about either films that we're selling or projects that they have to pitch. I mean, that's our job, that's what we're there for. So if you do, I would recommend going to the festivals and going to seek out these distributors, just walk the line of the booth and see who you can talk to.
At the American Film Market, and Ken, what they do with the AFM, which is in November in Los Angeles, the Lowe's Hotel turns into a film market, each hotel room. They take the beds out and there's sales rooms. And if you could kind of envision this, it might sound more mysterious. You could go to a bathroom supply convention. It's the same thing. A booth, people selling, curtain rods or shower rings. Here, it's movies. So there's really no mystique. It's like, if you're a salesperson, you do your posters, you have your trailers, and you hope that you have enough buyers and walk-in traffic to make a profit and sell. And what they do at AFM, they allow after like the fourth or fifth day, they offer a pass for basically producers, and they're the red badges. So you go and you can just go to every sales company and say, here's my movie, or I'm interested in talking to you. And you can talk to 400 or 500, maybe 300 sales companies. I mean, it's amazing, and it's relatively easy. You just go and you have your bag with your pitch, your script, or whatever, and it just takes a lot of legwork. And then something that Ethna brought up is it's really important to expand your universe outside of Philadelphia and go and meet people and spend time in LA. If you can, do that, go to some of these, go to the Cannes market. It's expensive, and here lies the problem is You know, it's expensive to do these things, but like I used to be on the road in a lot. And every month I was in Los Angeles, and then we had an office in London, and I was like never home. But, over, 10 years or whatever, you got to meet a lot of people. And if I just stayed in Philadelphia and didn't really travel, I couldn't do what I do.
So I'm going to ask you, because I know when I teach, I recommend to my students, like IFP is close to New York. So now that you're in New York and you guys are close enough that that's at least a bus trip. It's $11 to get up there if you stand in line at Balt.
Done that.
So what do you recommend if Philadelphia we're trying our best to keep our filmmakers here. Our universities are fantastic, but we don't have the big film. Hopefully it'll change now. We're all trying to get the task force to give us a better credit so that films can get 20 to 25% off and be made here for the tax credit that's being worked on right now by the film office. Until that happens and we get to grow this community, what do you recommend for people to do in New York, since that's a closer place than LA?
Well,
To connect.
I'll let Teresa handle the New York aspect, but as far as Philadelphia goes, we filmed, quite honestly, I hope the tax credit does go through, because we produced 2 films that have filmed in Philadelphia in the last year. We have one shooting right now, actually we have to go to set after this. But as she's right, Philadelphia is a great place to live right now because it's so close to New York. The airport's here. If you have to go to LA, if you really need to, you can plan it. It's just more of that's why we're located here. It's such a convenient trip to New York if we have to. We don't have to worry about the pricing to live there, to own an office there. It's just a lot of overhead that's unnecessary. I mean, the city is built right now perfectly to build up in a community, so I really hope that does, happen.
Mm-hmm. I would say IFP for docs, and also I think they do some scripted as well. I mean, Tribeca is trying to reimagine itself as more of a market as opposed to just Robert De Niro's playground. Doc NYC is also another space where they're starting to do more stuff, and I really am speaking much more over the past 5 years from a documentary space. I mean, it is a documentary center, a documentary mecca. I would say even more so than LA. Atlanta is really another space for TV if folks are looking to get into episodic or TV work, and like Rich will probably talk about, that's where the money is right now. But for New York in particular, I mean, there's a lot of industry convenings that are happening throughout the year, but I would really say, Q2, it's Tribeca, and in Q3, Q4, it's really IFP and Doc NYC. And everything else, they're great consumer-facing markets that happen there. Athena Film Festival happens there. What is the one that happens at the Museum of Natural History, which is really great. The Margaret Mead is another space. The other thing about New York is that's where the funders are. You have Chicken and Egg, you have Catapult. Creative Capital now is doing annual funding. They used to only do it every 2 years. They also fund scripted.
I just got the email. I think it's
yeah,
right
February.
now, next month.
Yeah, sure. Chicken and Egg, that's a great, women film funder. Catapult Fund is another one. Fork Films is another space. You want to look at folks like Participant, Motto Pictures, if you guys need someone to come in as an EP or for post-production. Those are some companies you should be looking at. And then Creative Capital. And these are, with Chicken and Egg, Catapult, and Creative Capital, this is got grant writing. But Philadelphia has some really amazing funders who are really, Windcode is a funder of ours, if you guys are familiar with the Haas folks. Swing Issues is another media outfit who's really trying to do more in terms of funding projects by women here in Philadelphia. And you guys are Swing Issues Media.
Swing Issues?
Yeah, they're very quiet, but they put some money out there. So you should not Swing Issues Media.
Excuse me.
Yep.
Funding scripted fiction. I'd like to know more because you hardly ever find that. And I see a lot of things for docs.
Yeah.
Can you talk a little more about that?
We're going to ask that. We're going to let her finish the
Yeah.
docs, and then we'll ask that question.
My background really in the last 5 to 7 years has been really much more around docs. Yep.
Could you slow down when you're naming off these names?
Yeah.
Maybe spell them.
Yeah, sure. I mean, locally Philadelphia-wise, it's really Windcode. They are one of the biggest funders out here for Philadelphia filmmakers and Philadelphia stories. Swing Issues Media is a group, and they've been quietly funding projects, local projects for years. You're also a Knight city, the Knight Foundation. Really.
Do you guys understand what that is? The Knight being a Knight city. All right, so I just know a little bit about it, but Knight Foundation will give grants because they don't always for film and but they have. I think there's certain cities. I think Philadelphia's one, New York, Washington. I can't remember. New York's not one.
Yeah,
Okay.
so only film. This is like very specific. Just to, like, so I'm thinking like take advantage of the fact that New York, LA, and Atlanta are hyper saturated with filmmakers and with the industry, so that there are local funders who are literally want to invest in you and your project. And HYY is trying to do a better job of doing that. And so that's one of the things, just in terms of funding.
So Knight has certain cities, and you can look it up, and I know Philadelphia is one of them, and they'll have different initiatives throughout the year, and they actually will, I think, for Philadelphia, fund different doc or arts initiatives. So you want to look up the Knight Foundation, KNIGHT, and they're the ones that actually, Philadelphia is a Knight city.
Yeah. What stage should you be at before you start contacting these people? Do you need to have your project finished? Should it just have
That's
a
one more
trailer?
question.
Have it as close to done, if not done, as possible. So you should be as close to wrapping up post-production as absolutely possible before you pitch. At least have your materials ready to go so that, like you have production photos ready, you have your marketing materials done, like anything that you can use as a presentation. That should all be good to go.
For certain funders, there is more and more development funding that's available. So if you have a script and a treatment, that's really the critical stage, is being able to go from script to shooting, and if you don't have that funding, then you don't have a film, right? So, but there are funders who are coming in the post side. So I would say development in post is when you're wanting to have stuff ready. And a very, very good work sample is like gold. You must have a strong work sample if you want to get funded.
Yeah, I think this just goes back to doing research on the foundations that you're reaching out to. It depends on what they're looking for. So if they're more interested in doing the finishing funds versus doing the investment funds in the beginning.
We're going to open up to questions in a couple minutes because we weren't ready to be there yet. So go ahead, Rich.
Yeah, excuse me, there was something you asked earlier and I wanted to bring up. You said, what's hot? And I mentioned AVOD. The education market has become the kind of video store money that distribution's lost. And I don't know if you work with Canopy's an excellent company, and you get checks, and they're huge checks. And there was another educational company, Alexandra Street, and I got a check. I didn't know what to expect. I got a check for $53,000. I was dancing. I thought I might get $3,000 to $5,000 because you don't know it. And this is what makes
what kind of film was it? Can you tell us?
No, it was like a whole bunch of titles, But what makes it difficult from a distribution side is because with TVOD, you don't know what's coming in the door for the month. So we have to be kind of careful in a way because like in demand, and when I mention in demand, does everyone know what that is? In demand's, if you have Comcast, you get it. In demand's owned by Comcast, Time Warner, and in demand. They're up in New York. I think they're at 375 Hudson. So they handle so your movie goes into in demand, and then in demand distributes it to all of their partners who wants to take it, be it Comcast, Time Warner, Cox, Cablevision. And please ask me or feel free on the break. I kind of run through these things a little bit fast, and it's a lot of information too.
What would be great is, and we can do this afterward as well, is develop a list for this group that has come today, and we'll send them that list, and we can take it and transcribe it off our videos so we don't torture you guys.
Okay.
We can do that as well. This isn't really a fundraising, which is a whole other panel. This is really about distribution and strategy for your filmmaking. So we can answer some of those questions, but what I'd like to ask today is when we talk about that strategy, if you don't get into Sundance, or if you don't, some of these films here as they're starting to develop, when do you develop that strategy? What do you think about in that strategy for both? Let's take film first, and then go ahead.
I have a real strong opinion about this. Assume that you're not getting into Sundance. Okay, if you look at what Sundance has, if you take the agencies, you look at the films that CAA, ICM, WME, UTA are handling, and Cinetic.
Yeah.
It's a really, really large percentage. So, people, and I hear this all the time. We were being considered. We were, right? Yeah, I know. It's all good. But you're not, unless you're really, really lucky and you're connected, you're probably not going to get in. And most of the films that play Sundance don't get signed. You read about the first films that, this one sold for $12 million and the other one's, that's all good. So Sundance ended, I'm trying to think of the exact date, but there was about a 7 or 10 day window to Berlin. Mm-hmm. So I stayed a little longer this year, and I'm hanging out with the sales agents, and they're trying to, finish their deals and get the international rights, non-domestic, for these films so they can sell them in Berlin. We have a film coming out that we picked up from Sundance last year. We didn't do the deal until Cannes because there's just so many films that, don't get picked up in that first week, 2 weeks. After 3 weeks, it's a buyer's market, and it's whatever they can get for these films. It's kind of sad, but same thing with Toronto. Getting filmmakers are really counting on this. South by, you have to kind of make a determination and then be prepared to move quickly and have a plan B, because chances are your film's not going to get in.
So if that's the case, how do they look at strategizing what's next for them? So in this whole group here, what should they think about in their film, and how do you begin that strategy if you can't hire? I mean, there's people that just do strategy for you. I was lucky enough that someone had just come from IDA in Denmark, and so I got my strategy for my first film 5 years ago, which I will share with all of you. So there's an interesting way of taking a look at that. I'm also going to share with you what gravitas, anybody who wants to see that PowerPoint of what you need to get. There's a 20-page PowerPoint that I'm happy to share with all of you of what a filmmaker needs to have when you get to distribution. So what do you recommend for them to start with strategy and thinking about their film?
Yeah, I mean, it goes back to kind of what we said at the top, is like, what do you want your film to do? Where do you want it to go? And a film is really, it's like a business plan. You have to just make sure you know exactly what it's going to look like. You're going to present your budget. If you want to bring an EP on, they want to know, like, is this a failing venture? You know what I mean? Do you have a good, is this just like an idealistic, is this a hobby film? Because you can do that and put it on YouTube and anyone can see it. Or is this a film that you actually want to go out there and have a decent either festival run or theatrical run and be able to either put it on the educational market or like have, laurels on it that are attached and have that be what you need to be able to get the funding for your next film, which is going to be a bigger film. So be realistic and it's like, it's the long game. Right? And if all of your eggs are in the basket of this one film, and the only way that its success is going to be Sundance, you're going to be there's a very high chance that you're going to be disappointed. But if you're here to be a filmmaker and to tell a story, and you want to have a long career, then you really have to think about it in terms of like, where does this fit in the larger kind of body of your work, who you're working with, how you're able to position your craft, your unique artistic vision within the larger marketplace, and do your research. So I think the strategy would come from there. Yes, of course you're going to apply to the top tier festivals, but if you blew your entire budget on craft services, then you're not going to have any money left, you know what I mean, to apply to festivals. So put that festival budget into your festival, submission fees into your budget. Make friends with the festival programmer so you can get waived, because you can do that too. You know what I mean? Like you can say, oh, I know somebody and they said I could get a waiver, right?
When was the last time you paid a submission fee?
I haven't paid.
Yeah, because we don't pay those fees, and I know Without a Box was what, 75?
Yeah.
It gets expensive.
Yeah.
And Without a Box is now closing.
Yes.
I just saw that. So Without a Box is now closing, and then Film Freeway, I just had to do a couple of other submissions because they asked me to continue to do that for the release. How do you get that waiver? I don't even know. Like, I mean, if you meet people, because you guys are always at festivals, but what if you aren't traveling to festivals and this is your first couple films? Do you write to them?
Well, I mean, a lot of the people, we have somebody who handles all our festival bookings who works for us, right? So what we do is as soon as we sign a film, we take over festival bookings. For 2 reasons. One, when you do it yourself, it is difficult to say, this is how much I want a screening fee, and they're like, well, we don't know.
Yeah.
With us, it's a screening fee. If you don't have the money, good luck. And we could be a little bit, and actually make money for the producer through the festivals.
Yeah.
But we don't pay. But you know what? You go to these parties and you meet all the festival programmers. Everyone's in a bar. Everyone's drinking and having a good time, exchange cards, and then you know that they might invite you to their festival.
Singing karaoke.
Yes.
Yeah, so so a lot of it's just hanging out, and then you're like, hey, it was fun, hanging out, and there's lots of parties at these markets and festivals.
But you don't have to have a badge. You don't necessarily always need a badge to get into every party. Like there's so many receptions at Tribeca where, I'm not saying gate crash everything, but maybe for this group, if you weren't like outside of the top, Sundance, Tribeca, South by, what are the other 10 festivals? You know what I mean? That you would say are a good bet.
Cleveland,
Yes.
Seattle, Cleveland's
Denver,
great. Seattle,
stars.
San Francisco. There's a host of them, and there's some really rip-rack festivals too.
For narrative, what would you say? Because I would say for doc, it would be, Full Frame, True False out in Missouri, Hot Docs in Canada. Don't discount the European market. For some reason, they just, there's so much money in the European markets, it's out of control. IDFA in Amsterdam is the big one for docs. I don't know what you would say for scripted.
Miami is, we have, I think 2 films in Miami, which kind of excited about. Any city that had, I'll tell you, Sarasota.
Oh yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
It's great. They
Yeah.
have it right
Yeah.
when everybody wants to.
That's how I got picked up.
Yes, Sarasota.
You go, yeah.
Yeah.
It's a lovely city.
It sounds like, it sounds like we're just rattling off random cities, but I'm telling you, like Sarasota actually is, and Cleveland, those are the 2 that I know with my first film, and Denver, it used to be Stars, right?
Right,
The film
Stars,
festival.
right, yeah.
So those were the festivals that it's like, we knew realistically we weren't going to get into Sundance. So these were the festivals we wanted to try to get into because we knew that distributors look at those festivals, right? And that there's more of and you could develop a relationship. Just look at who's on their programming staff. You know
Sonoma.
what I mean? Sonoma.
So it's another one that's not hard. But again, it costs a little bit of money to get to these places. But, a lot of it's relationship. Like, we didn't know each other, but we're working with people together. So it's like I kind of feel, so if you needed to have a question or said, hey, I got something, can you help me? It's real easy because there's that, connection, relationship. And it's, as you've heard 10 times already, you've got to go out and meet people. It's just, it's really important. It's just like any other business.
Before we open up to questions in a few minutes, I just want to go through PBS because that's such a different animal. We touched on it a little bit, But the idea of having to maneuver, I think I've applied to ITVS a million times, and then I think for different docs. The last one was a boxing doc here that we've been trying to finish for Tyrell Biggs, and they don't, sometimes, some years they do commentary, some years they don't. They gave me the nicest commentary of you had the best one, but we just did a female boxing doc, it's the only reason we said no to you. So you know, but it's very hard to maneuver to get that funding, and you're constantly writing grants and going in. But PBS has other ways besides ITVS and your POV. Can you talk about how to maneuver that market? And is there a script? Is PBS only doc, and are they only doing scripted through BBC? You know, like, I mean, how does PBS work?
You may recognize me from my role in Downton Abbey as the scullery maid. No, totally to be out of person. So yeah, I'm coming. So with POV. We are acquisition-based series, so we pick up, 15 to 16 docs every year, feature-length docs, and some short-form docs. And our acquisition fee ranges depending on, a number of things. We also are one of the few places that also distributes or broadcasts international documentaries. So the one thing about our series that I will say is we only are acquiring limited licenses for the broadcast and limited streaming. So that means you have the ability to sell off. If you have an agent or you have a distributor, we often work with folks like Cinetic or Breaking Glass. You can sell off the remainder of your rights and still make money. So you still retain the rights and the ownership of your film. So that's a huge thing for our series and why we see ourselves as filmmaker friendly. Our whole thing is we're distributing you to the system. So that means you have broadcast. We submit everybody to the Emmys, to the Peabodys, to the, if those are the types of things that are critical for you, and will eventually, for many of our filmmakers, help them get the funding for their next film. We also have a second series called America Reframed, which is just US focused. So if you don't get picked up for POV, which most films don't, except for Rich's films, most films don't, because it's 15 to 16 films. And we're looking at films. Yes, we have folks who are going out and going to all the festivals. I was at Sundance. We have folks that are in Sheffield, wherever. We do have an open call, so you don't have to pay to submit. We get over 1,000 submissions, but we have to whittle that down to 15, 16. So that's just to let you know what that looks like realistically. And a lot of the films that we do pick up are based on either relationships or festival accolades. So that's our curation model. For America Reframed, it's a little different because we are focusing entirely on domestic stories, usually from local filmmakers. Janet, Addie and Goldwater, the local filmmakers here. So we picked up Bad, Sonia Sanchez. POV played John Olszewski's film. He's a Pew Charitable Trust grantee, so that's another funder out here who's giving money. Quest, yeah. So Quest.
Excellent film.
Yeah, and so those are, with America Reframed curate year round, so we're always, we have an open call that's open all year. So if you have a documentary, feature-length documentary, feel free to come talk to me after. I'll be in some of the workshop afterwards. And then we just launched last fall a short form broadcast series on PBS. So again, if your goal is broadcast, and you have a community engagement impact component to what your goal is for your larger strategy, then public media is a good space to go to. And it is very difficult to go directly to PBS or to your station, as you know. So the strands, like the indie strands, talking about Frontline, Independent Lens, POV, now we have Voices, America Reframed. We're independent producers who acquire films and then push them out to the larger system. But other cities have much more kind of symbiotic relationships between the indie filmmaking community and the station, where stations will hire indie producers and license more of the work. Like in New York, we have dramatic shorts or scripted shorts that we actually acquire for WNET. I think that is what they're trying to do out here in Philadelphia. So I would pay very close attention and attend HYY events and start to meet the people who are there in terms of the programming side, because they are trying to acquire more, and they're dual licensees, so they have that nice NPR radio funding, and they also are trying to build up. They just launched a new weekend arts and culture weekend show. So if you have a film that's going to be out here, I would pitch it, you know, to be in it, to get an interview on that show, because they're looking for content, they're looking for folks to feature. And when you get that press, it helps you in so many other ways. It helps you with funding, it helps you with distributors, it helps you with festivals. I need to find the name of the show, but they just launched it, the Arts and Let's Talk or something.
You want to know?
You ought to know. They just launched that, I think, like last month, right? So I was just here last month. So.
And I don't want to dismiss the fact that people are always looking for funding in a group, and it's like the most difficult question to answer. We know we have better knowledge. It's easier online to figure out how to go for grants because that information is there. I'm always fascinated as to how do you find funding for scripted. So if you guys could sort of just address that before we go, because it's an important question, even though that's really not where. But I think that nobody knows, where do you get your money?
So, we deal with this quite a bit, and even though, for instance, Breaking Glass says we don't produce, we put in limited amounts of money, small amounts on certain type of films that have an audience. In the bigger picture,
Can I just ask you what types of films you think those are right now? We haven't talked about that. What types of films have money that you guys
genre,
Genres, yeah.
genre, LGBT, things like that. I mean, the horror market it's been strong for so long, and it's not my favorite genre at all, and I stink at watching the films. I get scared. I'm just not really strong in it, and I realize, like, you can't be great. So Scott watches them.
I get a lot of horror.
We have somebody in Florida who is just a total horror geek. That's all he does, you know. And so like in the genres, you know, those are. I guess I answered it right.
Or on the LGBT.
Yeah, we do African American films. There's such a demand for African American films. Just signed another film this week called One Bedroom out of LA, looking at another. There's such a demand, and there's places to monetize for African American stories that are not primarily, you know, guns and drugs and a lot of the, you know, inaccurate stereotypes. Just a good story, you know.
So you put in part of some of the money for some of the films.
Sometimes.
But where are your filmmakers for narrative, for scripted, getting the funding, you think?
Good question. So one of the things that we wind up getting calls about is, here's something typical. Hey, right, how are you? Good, this is, you know, so-and-so. I used to live in Philadelphia. I'm a lawyer in D.C. Great, what can I do for you? Well, my son-in-law, he's a great filmmaker, and we made this movie, and I wound up by default becoming the producer, executive producer, and I just sunk, you know, anywhere from $200,000 to, you know, more, and we don't know what to do with the film. So I have a soft spot for these guys. They meant well, they get on the juice, juniors saying, hey, we're making this great film and it's gonna change the world. And, you know, then the reality sets in. They don't get into Sundance, and they don't, you know, and, you know, and you just want to ask them, why did you put so much money in? There's a film that we were begged to pick up called Obamaland. And the producer sent us 2 cases of champagne, one rosé and one regular, saying,
We still get wine.
yeah, and then 2 cases of nice wine.
Yeah.
Huh? No, it didn't have. But so I asked this guy. He's wealthy. I'm like, how much did you have in this film? He says about $700,000. I'm like, oh God, what somebody could do with that?
Yeah.
Right, with that amount of money. But you see this, and what's interesting when you go out to investors is you'll see somebody who is so sharp in their particular business, being real estate development. So they know the price of every nail that goes in a wall. And then when they go into the film business, and they kind of usually get in by accident or ego, and then they're spending just stupid money. Then, at the end of the day, they go, oh, I just lost this much money, I'll never do this again. And you go in, it's just like...
So how can our filmmakers here find those innocents?
Yes.
Fred, okay, so here's...
Where's that builder in Philly that doesn't know better yet?
It's the
His name is, no, I'm just kidding.
You have a list of those names?
Yeah. So it's the 3 F's: friends, families, and fools. And it's it's a business. It's the business of film, and you need to have a proper budget.
Yep.
You need to have some cast. Like, I mean, except for genre films, LGBT, like a lot of these films will say, okay, who's the cast? Well, we don't have anybody. So and so was got, or they'll say, oh, I got this person and that person. And it's, you're like, well, who are they? If you have to explain it, it's going to make it tough. Like, for instance, we're involved with the film, and we have the hardest working actor shooting today, Eric Roberts, right? So some people, and Eric Roberts does literally, if you go on IMDb, about 35 movies.
He did 70 projects last year.
Yeah, he'll come in for 2 days, work for anyone. Now you might go, well, but there's a name, Misha Barton, who I don't know if any of you are familiar. She means something in the Redbox world. That's a different market. It's kind of the Walmart crowd. But Amisha Barton, Stephen Seagal, Tara Reid, these actors mean something. Tom Sizemore, and you can get these actors. A lot of that, because the business has changed so much, you can pretty much hire anybody. You go and you make an offer. And the first thing the agent wants is, you funded? Yes. Can you escrow? Can you, effectuate a talent deal with a check?
Yeah.
And you have them. If it's not a great movie, they kind of don't care. They want to work. Nick Cage, you can hire. He's got certain restrictions.
Mandy's.
What's it?
Intense. Mandy.
And Mom and Dad.
Yeah.
But it's, it's not that hard. You just need money, and it really helps if you cast up a film.
It is a challenge, though, a balance. Like I'm not sure. I can't assume what folks' budgets are for their films here. But as soon as you have SAG involved, then you have to play the SAG game. And a SAG ultra low budget, I think now is like $250 and under. So that's the threshold, and you can make a film. But once you get SAG involved, then it's like your days. There's a lot that you have. You need to get a bond. But it can help on the other side of it when you're thinking about distribution. So I think that's what you'd have to balance is, do you want to be able to what are you going to put your budget towards? And if you're going to walk away with anything, it's a business. This is a business plan, right? Your distribution plan is the business plan. It's what differentiates you from kind of doing this on the side with your buddies and doing this because this is something that really needs to go out there in a very particular way. And there's markets for that, there are forums for that, there's sales agents for that, and there are distributors for that. And there are people who will acquire your film, but ultimately you have to determine that, how much you want to put towards having a good story and having a good business plan.
I'm going to open it up to questions because I know you guys have so many. So we're just going to start on this side and come down around if that's okay. So, hi.
Hi.
And please introduce yourself when we ask you a question so everybody knows you here. So that would be great.
Well, thanks for putting me on the spot, Doctor. My name's Sean McNair. I'm a local filmmaker here in Philadelphia. I just have a quick question about the pricing guides that you can purchase. I want to know if they're worth it. Like the guides that are out there that offer the information about what distributors are actually paying for films. Like there's the Netflix Blind Guide and some of these other ones that are out there. No, they're very expensive. And the reason I'm questioning about their validity is because of something Rich brought up about how the market keeps changing. I want to know if the prices keep changing. So do those buying guides make any sense to purchase from a filmmaker standpoint?
I don't think so. There's who's the girl, Sydney, who has a tip sheet. I'm trying to think of her last name, but anyway, they will go, Sydney Levine, sorry. So she has one that tells you what was bought at the last market, how much was paid. They've never asked us, and we buy, 40-some movies a year. I think a lot of it is the bigger titles, which might not be relevant to you, because you'll see, and they always say, this movie bought at Sundance. You see it in the first couple days, $9 million, $12 million. So a lot of it's kind of public. The other reason why I'm not a huge fan of it is all this contractually, and the same thing in your contracts, it's all proprietary. So for instance, this deal that we're doing, if we announced what they were paying, we'd be in breach of contract. You don't want to show that you're spending so much, because then people, producers would say, well, you paid this much for that. So I'd be a little suspect, unless you have a big film, and that you're looking to go 7 figures, but at that point, you'll just go to, the majors, the mini majors, and say, here's my film. So I'd save your money, they're expensive.
Yeah. And just to add on, I've seen the most recent one, and it's more of a bragging rights guide than it is anything else. Because, for example, like the indie distros like Gravitas, Breaking Glass, people that you're going to work with for your first feature, or, features that aren't necessarily full of cast and, playing all the festivals. We don't announce that. Like Rich said, it's proprietary, so yeah, save your money.
How many, just an add-on to that, but what can filmmakers expect, especially documentary people, when you have a medium-sized film that didn't make it at Sundance? They don't offer you money, they offer you a percentage, so what your film sells.
We pay in advance.
But not everybody does, so that's what I'm saying, is what's a deal that people can,
When you go to distributor, they're not for any, like we acquire, so we're buying,
You're buying up front?
Yeah.
You're buying purchase up front?
Yeah, exactly, so that's the whole point.
And they're a good company to work with.
So then what can they expect? Because for
When you say
small
medium size, you have to clarify medium.
Right. Okay, so why don't you give us a range? Because that's going to be difficult. Let's say there's a feature film that is.
How about a genre?
Okay,
genre?
how about take a genre like a public genre, like an animal film.
A what?
An animal film. That's what we understand from Gravitas is saying, that it's like their biggest seller right now is they need animal films.
Okay.
So that's the only reason it was topical.
Well, let's say a horror genre.
Okay.
Because
That's
we haven't
fair.
done animal. Well, the well movie we're doing.
In the Doghouse family genre.
Oh, right, yeah.
So,
Just whatever you guys think.
I mean,
it's
it honestly really, it depends on the film. We can't really give you a range just because of, it depends on the type of genre. Is there cast in it? Has it played festivals? Is it coming through an agent who, has a minimum that you have to do immediately? It really, it's hard to do just a medium range.
I'll give you an example. A film that played Sundance that didn't sell in the first 3 weeks, $10,000 MG.
Yep.
That's, I'm making an offer Monday on a film that played Sundance, that just passed. Offer is going to be in the 20 range. It's a little bit of a difficult film, but it has the Sundance pedigree, and I think we know how to monetize it. But the days of chasing a film, going, well, if they say no, we want 100, you're like, okay, kind of
And
walk.
that's the advance, and then the whole point is you're going to the distributor who you trust, who will have the right distribution strategy, and then the monetization is where you see the back end.
And so
Yes.
what is that monetization? Do all of you understand what the distribution deal would be or what your monetization would be? Anybody understand that? What deal you're looking for? Do you want to understand? When you
Yes.
look for-
Can I ask I do apologize, can I ask one question about the 20 grand? So you give 20 grand up front, so then how do you recoup your money to a certain point, or you recoup your 20 grand back, and then what's the percentages for the film that you?
Well, that's what we're asking. That's what we're asking.
Well, I just-
So what's the deal? If you're paying that money, then how can a filmmaker expect more? How do they make more? What are they looking at? What are ranges of deals?
So I mean, a typical contract will be, there will be an MG upfront, which we all know. We'll sign it, put it out, and then there will be back-end splits. So really, once the MG is done, then we get into the splitting percentages on the deal. So we can do, you can do as much as 50-50, 60-40, our favor, your favor, whatever the negotiation is. And that's where you're starting to see more money. So once you get the MG, we put it out, and then we start splitting out the profits after that.
For
What is
instance,
MG?
Minimum guarantee. A minimum guarantee.
Right, so for television, well, digital, we do 50-50. DVD, we take it in our favor. So we might pay 25-30% to the producer. Television, we pay the larger percentage to the producer for television. So, and ships ancillary, air, I think we do 50-50 on airlines, ships, and planes.
Yeah.
And we've been doing more airplane deals. So here's something that's weird, is we never really were that well positioned or had films that the airlines wanted. Now we're we have companies reaching out to us saying, hey, we saw the press announcement, so are you experiencing more?
Yeah. Actually, it's interesting. There are more a filmmaker friend of mine who just went directly and sold his ancillary rights, and that's two planes. Because now there's more Wi-Fi. There's more. It's not just that one, screen that everyone has to watch. Like there's a lot more, and there's a whole Amazon deal with Delta where you could just watch your Prime, and that's all the only internet you get. But yeah, that's another option. So that's why when we say, looking at a contract and understanding your contract as part of your distribution model, your distribution strategy, you have all of these ways to earn money off of your film and get that profit back. And we're dealing specifically so we would acquire your broadcast rights exclusively for the U.S., a limited streaming window so that there's still opportunity for you to sell. We don't do SVOD, we do MVOD because it's through PBS, so that's a membership video on demand. But your subscription based to your TVOD, you could still sell that off. You could also sell all your international rights. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. Also, so with the budget, okay, there's an entity who I'm involved with, and I was asked to come out and speak, called Chicago Media Angels. And I went. Are you familiar with them? So this is a really interesting thing, and we had a conversation at Sundance about actually bringing a chapter here. So what they do is they go and they have 50 or 100 people who are interested in, in being in the film business. So they kind of pool money. They have somebody come up and pitch, I think it's every month or two, and they have, a get together, and then they'll say, hey, we're interested in, 10 people say, yeah, we like this film. They'll go and, put together, say, we'll put up this much money. And it's a pretty unique thing that they do. It's a nice thing, because a lot of the people who put up money, and they're putting up each 10,000, 15 per, person, they're kind of wealthy people who aren't going to go hungry if they don't make their money back, but they, they're in the business. So when there's someone who's, well, we're investors in this film, crowdfunding is also an area that is, if you could do it properly, it can be amazing. Because you can, Spike Lee raised, $2 million for a film? You're going to raise, much less. But if you go and, set a goal, and you say, okay, we're going to raise $40,000, $30,000, whatever. That's money that you don't have to pay back. And some people are very, very successful with raising money through crowdfunding.
Kickstarter is actually based in New York, so their headquarters is there, and they are very supportive of their film and media folks. So if you are planning to crowdfund, and I did my first crowdfunding campaign in 2010, 2011, when it was Indiegogo was the main. People have been doing that for a long time, but Kickstarter's all or nothing. It's a little bit the urgency of kind of raising the whole, getting to your campaign goal or not seeing any of it, and so. I would recommend, and this is just from my personal experience, not doing it while you're in production, but really treating it as part of your larger marketing strategy. Because all that it is really building brand awareness for your project, having people put their money where their mouth is, and then getting some press off of it, because if you have a huge campaign, you can make the case like, yo, look what I did with this film. And it's basically like you're building your audience in post. And in that case, for every narrative that the few narratives that I've done, we had somebody who came on to just exclusively run the Kickstarter campaign or the whatever campaign we were running. So, but it can wreck people. Like you could really, it's exhausting. It's a whole, I had an entire person whose job was the Kickstarter, like they were my Kickstarter producer, because I didn't want to deal with it. Like I had to make the movie.
Yeah, we've actually.
How much did you raise?
40, 30.
So
yeah, the first year I made it in 2011, we didn't know, and we had a goal of like 10, and we raised it in like 3 days, 10,000. And so we were just like, oh, okay, let's just go back to work now.
Yeah.
But now you have like stretch goals, and you can have like influencers, and we launched a fund with Kickstarter through my company, where we actually were quietly funding Philadelphia projects that were on Kickstarter, because it was a night funded fund. So we came in and put up to $10,000 towards people's campaign. We were able to get over $500,000 raised for 15 projects.
Is that still going on?
We just finished it, yeah. But quietly putting money. Yeah, so I'm just looking around the room to see if anyone, if we should do it again, because.
And I think something really important to note as well is to have a realistic goal when you do these Kickstarters, because if you don't get funded, then you don't get any of the money. So you really need to keep that goal realistic. So
how many people have done Kickstarters in this room? And how many people have been successful with their Kickstarters? Because it's really difficult. I can only put my hand up halfway because I have one success, one loss.
Yep.
So it's very difficult, but
Here's a way with Kickstarter. If you have a goal, and we did this, we raised, I think, $50,000 for a film that was already done. We had this film with Britt Robertson, who looked like she was going to be a big breakout star when she did Tomorrowland with George Clooney. She was the co-star. So anyway, we have Britt and
Sam Trammell was in it.
Sam Trammell. I don't know if anyone
During the
knows.
True Blood days.
Right, so we did this Kickstarter. What you can do, you can cheat a little bit, is if, let's say, I think we raised 40 out of the 50 legitimately, and then you just gap the other 10 so you get the other 40.
Yeah. You have your angel.
go ahead. I know we're going to go back to questions so we can get to everybody around the room.
I did a Kickstarter this summer. I wanted to say I'm at a very early stage. Thank you for being patient, because some of us, I have a scripted project that is feature, and I got enough on Kickstarter just to help me keep going with my pre-production. What do you think I should do as the next step? I have a budget, I got a script, I don't have a producer. Should I look for a publicist and a sales agent now? What are the steps? At what point should I look for those things?
I would highly recommend finding a producer, definitely first,
Right.
because you're going to need help to do all this. You're just going to run yourself ragged, and it's going to be difficult. As far as that goes, so you have your script, you have
Budget breakdown?
the budget breakdown. Is the film made? Is it completed?
No.
Okay, so I would recommend just getting all the pieces in place to start doing the script.
Because if you hire a publicist,
Yeah.
what's the publicist going to promote?
So it's not quite at that point. Okay.
Right.
The producer would be the next step.
And you should determine like what producer are you looking for? Are you looking for a line producer? Are you looking for a producer who'll help you raise some money?
Fundraising.
Yeah, and so like are you looking for a producer who has connections to be able to get you an EP? Are you actually looking for a production company who can front some of the production funds? So that's where you really want to bring in somebody. If you feel like your role is really going to be on the directing side with some, obviously you'll have a producer credit, but.
And should I look for a producer in the area where I want to shoot? Like, this is a film I want to shoot in Georgia, for instance. This is definitely my film in Georgia. And should I look in Atlanta for that?
Honestly, it doesn't really matter. It's more along the lines of finding a producer that's connected well enough in the where you what you're trying to do that he can help you get the funding.
But if it's scripted, I would say that something folks are rightly so sensitive around right now is just making sure your team is representative of the story that you're trying to tell. So if you are going to be shooting out in Georgia and they have great tax credits, they're obviously somebody who can help navigate that space for you would be a critical, a key part of your team. So you could have multiple producers, and if one of them is based there, that would be great.
Yeah, I agree. My vote would be to get some, because there's so much talent, and Atlanta is so hot right now. It's amazing the amount of work they have to do. I would have
And they have a great directory, I have to say. My friends that work on The Walking Dead called me last night and said, just look on our website. It's amazing how many jobs there are down here. Why aren't you coming? They're trying to get me to come down. But you could probably go on there and post that you're looking for a producer. And so you could see. I'll find out for you, but I think it is actually the film office's website for Atlanta.
Okay, thank you.
Next question. Hi, Susie. But introduce yourself.
I'm going to give a shameless plug, but also kind of answering one of the things you said. I'm Susie Nash. I'm the director of programming for the Women's Film Festival.
Yeah.
Coming up in March. So yeah, one of the things Rich was speaking about was the advantage of networking. Certainly, we've had people in this room and who have had come up to me and ask for waivers, and don't tell anyone, we're fairly generous with those. And just my little plug is that we do have 3 events coming up right before our festival. So we're looking for volunteers on the 20th at the Leeway Center. We've got a Quizzo night coming up March 7th. And we have our preview party on March 28th. I'm sorry, February 28th. So those are all ways for people to meet and mingle, and hopefully some of our panelists will be there. And PWIFT is always supportive, and of course these events too are great for meeting people and networking, and we've seen some pretty amazing things come out of these meetings.
I can't wait. I love it. I can't wait till all those events. I'm coming. I'm afraid of Quizzo, but I'm coming to all the other stuff. Any more questions? All right, we missed this side, then I'll go back to this side. Go ahead.
Yeah, hi.
What's your name? Who are you?
Oh, Carol Finkel, F-I-N-K-L-E. Hi. So, I'm old, and
No, you're not.
yeah, so just a fact, So, I have a lifetime of footage. My world is the world of the deaf, and from where I sit, at this wrinkle in time, if you will, that the last oppressed minority is exploding in Hollywood and everywhere else. I hold that archive in my being for 50 years, as well as actual footage of what would be analogous to someone holding the footage of every great, let's just say African American, or Jewish comic, or whatever that genre is, that the analogy is I hold the archival footage of all those people who do what the House of Representatives is bragging about every day, which is acknowledging those who opened the doors and laid the groundwork for everything that's happening now. So you have deaf talent everywhere. I have the archival footage of all those people, every comedian, every performer, every actor, every playwright, every theater company in the uppercase D, deaf world, culturally deaf world. I don't want to drop dead tomorrow, which I don't plan to do, but I'm 76, who the hell knows, right? So, it's just a fact. So, the point is, if I do drop dead tomorrow, I don't want my entire life's work to be dead on my computer and my backup drives. I have no money, I live on Social Security, but I'm obviously maniacal passionate about all this stuff. It's my blood's flowing. My air that I breathe is the deaf world. I'm a hearing parent. who raised deaf children, 2 adopted deaf children now, grandchildren from India and Colombia. My family gives new meaning to the concept of mixed, on and on and on and on. I can tell these stories like no one else can. So the third part, and then I'll stop. The third part is I also happen to be the person who filmed 16 programs about Ida B. Wells in this city, programmed by Moonstone Arts Center, Larry Robbins, many of you undoubtedly know him, and Ida B. Wells, Trayvon Martin and lynching. 16 weeks of this. No one else filmed it except me with my dinky, this. But I need at least someone to look at that footage. Every single African American and ally in this city and beyond hosted these 16 programs. We have a city that has the history of the freedom fighters. You stop any kid on the street, never heard of the freedom fighters. I have all the info. It matters. This all matters. And right now, Ida B. Wells and this wonderful lady who we've crossed over for years, but we didn't really know each other. Now we will. And neither of us could give up like a full day to go to something because we're so pushed and pulled with how we spend our time at this moment in life. She has been 15 years writing the script about pre-women's suffrage, and Ida B. Wells is in the heart of her script. So this is.
So are you looking? So you're trying to figure out. I'm trying, and I don't mean to interrupt you, because I want to make sure that I've got to go around to get everyone in the room. And you have such an interesting story. But what you're looking for is a producer. You're looking for one. So I think that if you, I'm going to ask these guys to if they have advice for you. But as a producer director who does cultural preservation and women's work and justice, I would say to you that you do have such an archive of beautiful material, it sounds like. You need to go out and find and post that's what you're interested in. There are probably now 6 Facebook pages locally for filmmakers. I know Sean runs one, we run one on PWIFT. Just summarize in a synopsis who you are and what you're looking for. You will find people looking for stories. And that's what we're looking for producers. We look for the best story. I mean, it's based on articles. What you are, the fact that you already are hosting this footage, you need someone that is as passionate as you are about doing a documentary and doing work in that subject area. I'm going to continue because I know that you know this very well.
Yeah, copious notes. Archive in the documentary world is king. You can blow your entire documentary budget if you have any archival material. So your ability to properly preserve and license the archival work that you have is so critical, not only in terms of preservation, but also in terms of your own monetization for what seems like was probably unpaid work. So you've been holding all of this stuff and documenting an entire community's history, and nobody has compensated you for that, is what I'm hearing. So I think a few things. One is, you have to make sure that the media is being preserved properly, because if it's digital, what they're saying now is we don't know how, it could disappear at any moment. There are a few, media preservationist specialists. We work specifically with AV Preserve. There are many funders who would happily, take a call with you to just kind of see what the state of the state is. TDP, which is primarily works with theater, but they've been the ones who've been critical in underwriting folks coming in to sign and caption any arts and culture in the country. You should check out the TDP website, Theater Development, it's TDP.
Theater Development.
I think it's Project, TDP, but they have a lot of funding right now that's specifically towards the deaf community and hearing impaired. Locally, you should look at whoever...
Never say hearing impaired again, you heard it from me. Deaf
community, capital D. I mean, here I would say Pew, you should take a look at the Pew Charitable Trusts. They fund so much, and this sounds like right up their alley, but you're really, Knight, obviously. And the National Endowment for the Humanities, who gives funding specifically for preservation, cultural access and preservation. And actually right now in the doc world specifically, ability and disability is a huge, it's a big thing right now, and making sure that representation and access to resources is key. And I know there's that actress who's in The Good Place, Jamila.
Billy.
Yeah.
Sims.
Okay, so I'm going to, because I want to make sure I get around to these other people's questions. And I want you all to know that after the lunch and in the breakout, you'll even be in smaller groups to ask specific questions to your project. What I'd like to happen now for the last few minutes that we have is that if you have a question that is general to the group about distribution or about licensing, please ask it. If it's specifically about your project, please wait till after lunch when you're in your small group and you get everybody's ear. So who has a general question? I'm going to, right behind you, and then I'm going to that table, and then I'll come. You're the last question. Right there. Go ahead. I don't know, the gentleman right there that just raised his hand?
You. Hi, John Martin, local filmmaker. Thank you guys so much for being here. I've learned a lot at least. One question that we seemed to glance over near the beginning was somebody asked about, or the topic came up with, what is the general timeline of distribution after a film is made? And could we break that into an ideal and a nightmare scenario, perhaps?
If you could, why don't you start January 1st? Like from movie.
If a movie's done January 1st?
Yeah, or something like that, so everybody can understand the timeline.
Okay, well, so, I'll just go over the general, and then if I miss anything, you guys can take it from there. So typically, once the film is done, you're finished filming, everything's good to go, it's packaged. Your first goal is to play film festivals. So that's your first move. You want to submit to film festivals, depending on the range of the film. If it's upper tier, South by, all those good things. They all have posted deadlines. They all have easy ways to submit. So you take care of that. Once you play your film festival, you do your premiere. You can play other film festivals. Some of them only work with world premieres titles. Some of them will play titles after they've played. So like Rochester will play anything. Philadelphia Film Festival plays a lot of Sundance titles. Definitely look at local film festivals first if you're really wanting to play in your home market and you can't get into like the top tier festivals like this. They're more willing to work with local filmmakers as like a Philadelphia highlight spot over others. Once you do your film festival, it's time to do distribution generally. So it goes from film festivals, it'll go to DVD and then VOD, transactional. So those are the next two, or actually, sorry, let me reverse, theatrical. Theatrical release is next, if you want to do one, it depends on the film. So once you do your festivals, you'll do your theatrical screenings. Typically for independent films, it's week-long runs in certain select cities, depending on which markets you want to play. After it's done as theatrical run, then it's the DVD and the VOD release runs. So first you start with DVD printing, Blu-ray if you want to do it, transactional VOD, which is iTunes, Amazon, Vudu, Google Play, Xbox, PlayStation, all of those. Then you move into your then after that window is completed, there's a certain timeline that you'll have to wait, and then you do your subscription VOD services, which is your Netflixes, Amazon Prime, that type of thing. And then after that will be your advertising VOD, which Rich mentioned before. And then after that, you'll do your educational. So that's the traditional timeline. That's the general timeline of how things get released.
So
I have a quick, I'm sorry. I just because of doing your timeline, there's one that I'm grappling with now, so I'm going to be selfish. Sure. But the pre-release, which I'm still trying to figure out, and since you do marketing and PR, which is a part of that timeline. So could you explain what that is?
Go ahead. Just be a little more specific.
Okay, so pre-release I'm looking down at for VOD. So my understanding is that iTunes, they'll do a pre-release for a pre-sale. Can you explain what that is?
That's rare.
They'll do for a pre-sale. Mm-hmm. Okay, so is this film doing a theatrical?
No, this one's not doing a theatrical.
Okay,
so
because there was the program that I best understood was when there was a day and date release that you could go like a month earlier And that I understand, but I'm still a little confused.
So I'll just tell you, because then I'll tell you what Gravitas does. So for some of them, that if you don't have a huge theatrical release and you have a pre-release, you can, what they'll do is, especially if there's a niche market like entertainment, animals, circus, which is, they already know that they have a big market there. So what they'll try to do is, it's kind of a game they said that they play with iTunes. So they get a pre-release the month before. If you get 400 people, it saves in their marketing budget, because then iTunes will push it to their top page for advertising, which then Amazon picks up. So that's the explanation they gave me for why there's a pre-release.
Okay, that makes
So that's the
so
only
you have
reason.
to get 400 to kick it into.
It's just like, yeah.
Okay, because it's not, right, it is not available, it's just on a pre, like people signing up in advance.
Right, and
Right.
it's somehow some sort of marketing game they say
Yeah.
they started.
They're
Right,
getting you to
okay.
do the marketing
Right.
for them.
Right.
So,
They help too, but they just said that's why they do a pre-release.
right,
So honestly, we don't work with pre-releases.
Okay.
We
So we'll
have
move
our
on to the different-
well, no, we have our internal marketing. So we basically do what iTunes is trying to, Gravitas is trying to get iTunes to do for you. Like we do that internally ourselves. So it's just a different.
where
way.
we're pitching
Right,
them,
yeah.
except iTunes, so, our rep who we've been working with for a long time, just segued over to, what do you call it, TV, you know, and the scripted and all of that. So from what I understand is it's going to be more of a computer system, such as Amazon has. The Amazon, there used to be, when you'd say, calling people, the industry's changed so much, whereby there used to be people at the other side who you knew, and you could call and you'd say, hey, I got this film. Yeah, I'll watch it. You know, there was a conversation. Like Amazon now, it's a computer system who we deal with. And then when there's a problem, you get a call from like India, you know, and they'll try to fix something. Sometimes they'll put the wrong stuff up, blur, like any type of little problem. But it starts off that it's a computer system. In the old days, you know, the old days aren't that long ago. You would have a film, you would submit it, and the buyer would actually watch it. I'm reticent to mention certain people because I think it's on tape, but certain companies, they'll just look at the artwork and they look at the trailer, and that's it. So what we do is we've upped our art budgets a lot, and we have an in-house art department, and we also use about 5 different companies around the country and world, actually. We do a lot out of the UK, but it's like that's where your money goes. And maybe I should have mentioned that earlier. 2 things, like the movie doesn't even have to be that great. You do great artwork and
A great
trailer.
and you're halfway there. You know, and you have a festival, even if
That's a film festival secret, is like, you know, you want your film festival still and your trailer to be really good, because that's how you're going to get butts in the seats at your festival premiere, right? So make sure you have good stills, high quality stills, you know, and a good trailer. And what they say, which is, I don't know if you guys think it's true, a lot of people in doc world like to make sure that their doc titles for their films, because they're always so, like, you know, esoteric, is in the first half of the alphabet.
Alpha stacking. Alpha stacking. We actually got our hands slapped. Gravitas was excellent at that. And then we got to deal with Warner Brothers to do our VOD, which was a tremendous deal. And they actually closed that. So by the time we got the contract, we're like, this is great. We did like 10 films, and then they closed that division. But alpha stacking, so if a movie was called, you know...
it sounds ridiculous.
A call to arms.
Yeah, it would be, right. Or it would be American. If we have a friend who's adept at this. So if it's a poltergeist goes to American poltergeist, you'd put American in front of it. Or a number, right. Yeah, 11, yeah. And you would throw, and that was kind of more popular. So we're always trying to stay ahead of the curve, trying to get around the system. Alpha stacking was a little bit more popular before, where every film was like a number or an A or a B. It's not as...
A lot of
But
companies...
now there's so many.
Yeah,
A
it's
lot of them
prevalent.
change the
but-
algorithm, so some of them it matters, some of them it doesn't anymore. So it's really...
But here's just on a timeline, because I think we kind of glossed over. So let's say the distribution company signs your film January 1st, okay? So what happens is we make a determination. It's going to be a theatrical, it's a limited theatrical, a day and date. Day and date theatrical means it's 10 cities plus. So you do then, if it's going to be a day and date release, we have to go and have the theaters picked out. And it has to be legit, because people were cheating a few years ago when they were doing 2 or 3 screens and telling In Demand they were doing 10. They started checking, which they should. We were always too afraid to cheat. We weren't big enough that we figured if we got caught cheating, we'd lose our contract. So that kind of put the fear in. So anyway, you license the film, and it's going to be a day and date, January 1st. So now we would have it, let's say, slotted for May 1st. Okay, so that gives us 4 full months to get it ready. Goes out May 1st, it's in the theaters. Same time it's on transactional. So when you look on Comcast, you see in theaters now, that's basically you're buying that space because you're four-walling. Four-walling means that you're paying the theater to let you show your film, and you pay a fee, and it's expensive. And then you get most of the money that comes in at the box office. So it goes on May 1st. It's up for 6 months in that folder. DVD can come out 3 months later, so DVD can come out May, June, July, August can go out. You have a 2-month blackout, so it's August, September, like October 1st. You can then go to SVOD. And so that's your subscription, or you can do broadcast, Showtime, Stars, PayCable, whatever you can get. So it's about a 9-month window from the time that you sign a deal before you've run through these permutations of windows, your theatrical, things like that. So I don't know if that helps with the timeline, but...
Is that blackout contractual or just like sort of a...
That's contractual. Yeah. Sometimes, if it's 60 days, we've been known to black for 30, and we haven't really had our hands slapped, but we wouldn't push it up against the wall. But so it's, yes, contractually it's 60.
I have to move on because I got to get you guys to lunch so nobody fades. And I'm going to take the last 2 questions. Let's do them very quickly, please.
In terms of the film festival strategy, say that you have a small budget and it's for a short film, is it better to try to hit those big cities, or is it better to really just try to go for smaller genres? Like how would you best spend the money, or is it something where maybe it's best to put the money, put some of that money onto like Film Freeway where you can pay for the advertising to get your festival shown to all the people, so that they're going to then come to you and want to give you a waiver. Like what's the best strategy there?
Depends on how good your film is.
And you're talking about a short film, right?
Right. If your short is really, really strong and you believe in it, and it's going to, make your name and get you some things, I'd swing for the fence. I would go for it and try to get it, like as wide. But again, if it's really, really good, why not? If it's okay and you're not sure, be a little. But if it's an amazing short, I'd go for it.
I'd also think about what you want that premiere to do. Like, are you trying to make your name as a short filmmaker, or are you trying to use this as a calling card to get funding for a larger feature? Because that could also, if you're just trying to kind of get out there with your short and you want to continue to do short form content, there's a lot more ways that you can go out and get, you can be a short form filmmaker and do branded content and do all of that. That's totally possible and viable through any festival kind of whatever festival strategy you decide. But if your goal is to use this as a calling card or as a proof of concept so you can get the funding to make the feature, then I think I would bet on the larger festivals where you get more exposure. But it depends on what your track is.
And I think it's easier, and probably better, but we've been doing buying shorts compilations, the politics are, I think, a little bit easier.
Mm-hmm.
As I mentioned with certain, so for instance, you go into New York, Cinetic is New York based. They have a really big footprint, Submarine.
Submarine.
Right, so it's kind of like whose backyard you're in. With shorts, I think it's a little bit easier, just because the real estate for feature slots, like really important, nobody's fighting over and politicking over,
Shorts.
a 7-minute short.
We can talk about more, and then one last question here, please. I know you've had your hand up, so.
Yes, thank you. My name is Doreen Creed. Joy and I are producing a fashion documentary, and we're very much in the early stages. I believe Teresa mentioned some specific foundations or grants that give you money at the development stage. So either if you could name a few or put it on the list that you're going to come up with.
Totally happy to put it on a list. For later, I think specifically I would look at folks like Chicken and Egg. I think Bertha Foundation also does a lot of funding for that. Windcoat also locally, take a look at them. And if anything, one of the things I would think about as you're going to funders is not to ask, take an introductory call, introduce yourself, and ask them as experts as opposed to just for money first. That's the whole idea. They say if you ask for advice, people give you money. If you ask for money, people give you advice. So if you come to people and you treat them genuinely treating them like experts in their field. Here's the story, here's the pitch, what do you think? Who's a good stakeholder? Who should we be in touch with? A funder, they're part of large networks, and their job is to give away that money to the right project, so treat them like that.
And I'm so sorry, and we're lucky here in Philadelphia because Windcoat likes to be very involved, and they've moved now on to more journalistic issues, but they, I know Windcoat themselves love cultural preservation because I've been lucky enough to be helped by them, but I think that that's something that's such great advice because they want to help you, even if they don't necessarily have funding for that particular project.
They're not the right fit.
Right.
They want to make sure that they put you, yeah.
Could I ask about the fashion project? Is there a specific designer you're...
We're looking at designers who have had a national impact on American fashion over history, and it's pretty surprising the names that come up. It's major people that no one has any idea are from Philly, produced in Philly, manufactured in
So
Philly.
you're looking at like an Albert Nippon,
Yes.
Galanos, Jones, New York, Lily Pulitzer.
Jones, right now, all the Max Rabb,
Yes.
all the Schmada guys, Sidney Kimmel, who's,
There you go.
what's that? I'm sorry.
Joy worked for Joy.
Okay, Joy, yeah, okay.
And what is your distribution?
So
So your
there's-
distribution strategies museum related, or what are your thoughts in terms of where it should go? Because that's an interesting,
Well, actually, PBS was our first
Great.
thought. And we were kind of inspired, Joy was, by a movie or a show called Before Hollywood that talked about Philly's contribution to the film industry before Hollywood. So early in the start of the film industry, there were production houses on Broad Street and Steadicam was invented here. So similar to
Mr. Brown.
fashion.
Yeah.
There's so much that's happening that people, even to Urban Outfitters today.
Oh, yeah.
Well, and the incubator that's here now, one of the incubator centers in Macy's.
So here's what's interesting, and I'll just take a second. There's a reason why I mention this. Is there's a Halston film coming out. I forget the name of it. It's at Sundance. So we were involved when we just started as a company in a film called Ultra Suede : so what was it called? Something Halston, Roy Halston, right? And it went to, I think Tribeca has it for domestic, and we took international. And we couldn't give it away. It was really, really difficult. So you have to be kind of a little wily and opportunistic. We just went back to the producer of the doc saying, hey, we want to pick up international rights again because there's going to be another big push on Roy Halston with this other film. But one of the things that it's really frustrating, and I'm old as, you know, we're the same thing, is I know all these guys, you know, and all the designers you're talking about, the film people, from the, you know, fashion, and, you know, my family was in the business. So, what gets frustrating is people of a certain age, and you're dealing, like you're on the other side, you're the millennial, so you have this project, and you go, hey, we're talking about, you know, and Roy Halston, and they're like, who's that? You know, or, you know, Albert Nippon, like, who's that? Or, you know, so there's an awareness issue at hand that as you notice, I got excited, because you spoke of something that I know about, and I'm interested. I know why we failed before, but we're trying to kind of still go down that path.
So we should talk to you.
Yeah,
but that's perfect for the brainstorming and the workshop, because maybe then you think about how to compare that with new hip modern, because of the incubator, and so many of New Yorkers are living here because it's easier to live here
Look at the
do
funding.
fashion work.
And American
So
Masters is also picking up, so I think that's one thing to consider if you're looking at PBS. I'm a little older than you think, but American Masters is definitely starting to acquire more works, especially if you're looking at it in terms of like folks who have really making a name. And the Smithsonian also funds.
And last, I know you want to break, here's a little trick too. If you're looking to make money, okay, so we mentioned alpha stacking, you know, changing the titles, doing all these things. If you're doing, let's say, a genre film, and we have a friend who's pretty savvy at this, his movies are not good. He has good artwork and jokes. They're not, it's junk. It's you know, it's really, you know. So he just showed me a film that he did with planes. It was the Nazis and, you know, the bombing. Well, he has these little model planes. There's no real planes, right? He had, you know, 6 or 7 guys in German outfits. One, you know, folk with a yellow star, and that's it. But you don't know it. And I said, what's the budget on this all in? It says $20,000. Now, he's going to sell a ton of these at Walmart. Here's where I'm going with this. If you look at what's coming out, people are knocking, and again, this is a money thing, this isn't art. You say, okay, this is coming out, The Nun. And there's a pattern. You'll see the studio film, and then all the secondary, tertiary companies come out with The Nun on, you know, and you confuse people. You know, you confuse them, and you're like, okay, you know, like people are going to rent it. So if you look, talking about timing, a year out, a year and a half with the studios, because there's, you know, always at least a year and a half, and they have, you know, this type of film, you can go. And it's kind of compelling to distributors. Okay, I'm gonna do, you know, this type of film.
There were about 7 different Krampus movies within like 5 months.
Oh yeah. And we know the same.
7 different.
Krampus, this big studio did a film called Krampus with Andrew Scott, and like all the tertiary studios did Krampus Goes to Christmas or Krampus, you know, Unleashed or anything.
Lady Krampus, Grandma Krampus.
It's a copycat.
Yeah. But it's not a bad way to make some money, because it's not art, but it's
Right, it's a great break. So I'm gonna let you guys all break for lunch, but so please go enjoy your sandwiches, and then we'll come back in 30 minutes.